Halo semuanya, welcome. Thank you for coming for today. Now we are in Speakable, one of the program under the Speak Up Now youth communities. And today we are going to have our speakers, the first speaker that is like foreigner. Now I would like to show you the video profile of today's speakers. So let's check it out.
Narasumber Speakable kali ini adalah Emily Halloran. Wanita cantik ini merupakan mahasiswi jurusan ekonomi dan hukum di Universitas Sydney. Kak Emily ternyata pernah loh student exchange ke Indonesia.
Kita masih akan menunggu. We will wait for the video to come up. So while while waiting, is the problem solved already?
Narasumber Speakable kali ini adalah Emily Halloran. Wanita cantik ini merupakan mahasiswi jurusan ekonomi dan hukum di Universitas Sydney. Kak Emily ternyata pernah loh student exchange ke Indonesia. Yuk kita simak perkenalan dari Kak Emily.
Halo semuanya, nama saya Emily Halloran. Saya berasal dari Australia. Saya seorang mahasiswa di Universitas Sydney. Hi everybody, my name is Emily Halloran and I'm from Australia and I'm a native English speaker. I'm currently studying at the University of Sydney. I'm still completing my Bachelor of Laws and I've already completed my Bachelor of Economics and my Diploma of Language Studies majoring in Indonesian. On the 15th of November, 1-5, I'll be partnering with Amira from Speak Up Now Indonesia to do a Q&A about my experience working, studying and traveling in Indonesia. I'll be speaking in English and I'll also be giving advice on public speaking in English. I hope to see you there. Bye.
Nah, jadi tunggu apa lagi? Buat kalian yang ingin tahu lebih banyak pengalaman Kak Emily, yuk ikut keseruan acara Speakable Speak Up Now bersama Kak Emily.
So that's it. That's our speaker today. So I would like to invite Emily to the stage, and we can actually say hi, and actually also introduce you about Emily Halloran. We will wait for Emily to enter the stage.
Hi, Amira.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, everyone else.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. How are you?
Is it? I'm good. So now, is it sunny in Australia?
Yeah, it's very hot today.
Okay. Yeah. So before we start, I'll just gonna introduce a little bit about Emily more. So beyond a student for economics and law in the University of Sydney, Emily is actually have an experience previously having a student exchange in Indonesia. So she exchanged here for 1 semester, and she's actually studying here in Indonesia in Universitas Indonesia. And she previously have experience in legal research assistant in the University of Sydney. And she also had an experience in being a private tutor for English. So probably all the participants today could ask questions about public speaking and studying English, as well as she previously also one of the student representative for the Department of Indonesian Studies in there in the University of Sydney. So without further ado, hi, Emily.
Hi, Amira. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, I actually very glad to hear that you are actually be the first foreigner speaker that's actually, speak in our sessions today. How do you feel?
I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited. I'm the first one here. I'm very excited. Thank you for inviting
Yeah,
me.
don't worry. So she is actually a very good friend of mine, and I just want to share that because I'm one of the mentor of Speak Up Now, especially for those who would like to learn public speaking in English. We actually really glad to know that today we are going to have a question and answer session. So the setting would be more like a talk show. So I hope everyone's having fun. And if you have any questions, please do put it on the YouTube as well as other means of platform that you would like to ask the questions. But I think because this one would be on YouTube only, so I hope you can actually put your questions below while we are having a talk shows. So Emily, I heard that you have a student exchange in our university, Universitas Indonesia.
Mhm.
So perhaps you could actually talk more about what's your experience there and what what's your preparations when you are actually coming to Indonesia, and is this your first time coming to Indonesia?
Yes. So I went to Indonesia in 2018 on exchange. It was the first exchange I'd ever done. It was the first
Mhm.
time I'd ever been to Indonesia. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I had never been to Indonesia. I had aunties who had been to Indonesia a lot, so I knew something about it, but I'd never been there. I got a scholarship from the government. The Australian government offers this scheme called the New Colombo Plan Scholarship, and it's trying to promote Australian university students to study and work in not Indonesia, all of Asia, and trying to encourage us to learn at universities and to learn languages and develop cultural, social connections in Asia, because Australia, the government, we feel it's so important that Australians have great connections with Asia because we're in Asia, we're in Oceania, and those connections are important. I got a scholarship to study economics and Indonesian over in Indonesia. In terms of preparation, I didn't know anyone in Indonesia, so I had to do a lot of research to find out things like accommodation, how to communicate with people, transportation, things like food and water and government, like bureaucracy, that kind of thing. I studied Bahasa Indonesia for 6 months in Australia at the University of Sydney before I went, so that I could talk with people and
Mhm.
count and stuff. And there were about 10 of us actually going to Universitas Indonesia and doing the same program. So we all worked together to organize that sort of thing. We had to organize visas and everything, which was a bit of a long process. What else do we have to organize? We had a contact at Universitas Indonesia for accommodations. They helped us organize that. And generally, we tried to prepare to understand the culture and the language so that when we arrived, we'd know what to do, we'd know where to go, we'd know how to speak to people, all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, that's great. I mean, it's your first time coming to Indonesia, and then
Mm,
you heard a lot about Indonesia from your auntie.
yeah.
And probably, do you have any kind of like additional preparations before coming to Indonesia besides what you have mentioned previously?
We had to do, it was a long time. I'd never been away from home for that long. So I was going to go for about 7 months. And so I had to organize and think about, this is so stupid, but clothes, because the Indonesian climate is very different to Australia, and the heat and the humidity. So we had to organize that and plan that out. I had to do a lot of planning to try and figure out accommodation and where I would stay with my friends and that kind of thing. Um, we had to organize flights, obviously, and then plan for how I would get from Jakarta to where I was staying. Jakarta is very big, very, very big, and it takes a very long time to get anywhere. The traffic is a lot worse than here in Sydney. So I had to plan ahead a lot to try and figure out, how do I get to places and what kind of transportation do I use? In Indonesia, there's a lot more use of Grab and Gojek than here. if you came to Australia and went to the airport, you can catch the train really easily, and it's a much smaller city. So I had to plan all that out, that kind of thing. But once I got there, I think it was a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. So probably having a lot of research, and as also, trying to get everything planned out
Yeah.
beforehand, because it's your first time visiting Indonesia, as well as, it's a country that you are unfamiliar with. And I know that you are also citizen of the European Union as well.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So you are a double have a double citizenship, is it?
Yes, that's right. So I'm an Irish citizen, a citizen of the Republic of Ireland, because my grandparents come from there. Yeah, and I had that recently. Yeah.
Yes. So it's something that is like very different. I mean, like going to Asia, like going to the Western, comparing Western cultures as well as Asia is actually very different.
Yeah.
Okay. So probably you could actually tell us more about your experiences when you are actually here in Indonesia. Like, how's the study systems like for you? Do you, having a difficulties in anything when living here?
In terms of experiences, so when we arrived in Indonesia, there were about 10 of us, and we started with a program, I think, through UI. It wasn't through UI, it was something else, about learning about the culture of Indonesia before we actually started studying economics and Indonesian language there. And that's when we sort of began organizing our accommodation and figuring out the transportation and everything. But what I realized when I got there was that I had maybe 6 weeks of holidays before I went, and I'd forgotten all my Indonesian. So I didn't know how to do anything. And I would go into shops and I couldn't remember how to count, and they would say prices to me, and I would be like, oh, no, I didn't understand. So it took a while to adjust to everything and knowing all that kind of thing. When I was in Indonesia, we studied at the BIPA UI program, which was 4 hours a day of Bahasa Indonesia. But besides all the studying, I went to lots of different places in Indonesia. I got to go to Bandung with some other people from University of Sydney, and I went to Batu Keras, and I also went to Bali with Amira later on in the trip, and got to experience lots of different places in Indonesia. I traveled around Jakarta. I went to Pasar Majestic, which I knew about from Australia, and I was very excited about, because we don't really have anything like Pasar Majestic at home. It's like lots of fabrics and tailors and that kind of thing, and I really enjoy all of those things, but we don't have it as commonly here. What else did I do in Indonesia? I joined the basketball team up in Indonesia, in the Faculty of Arts, I think. That was very fun, and I got to train with them. Yeah, I did lots of things. It was great. I got to study. I got to travel. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, you are actually nail everything. I mean, you do extracurricular, you study, you also travel, you make friends, and I know that you do an internship as well.
Yes. We had to do an
Oh
internship.
my God.
Yeah.
Tell us more about it.
It was part of the scholarship. You had to do an internship, and I couldn't. Yeah, we were all applying for different ones, and then I found out my friend. How did I meet him? I don't know. My friend Jackie worked in the Cancer International in FEB, Fakultas Ekonomi dan Business, and I was organizing with the head of the department, Ibu Mutia, for something else. And I saw Jackie and I said, oh, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, I work here. And I was like, oh. And I said, Ibu Mutia, can I work here too? And she said, yeah. So I started working there. It was really fun, and they had students who were international students, and then they had domestic students as well. So I got to practice Indonesian and English. We got to go to Taman Mini, is that right?
Yes,
Taman Mini, with other international students who came to UI to do a brief exchange or something like that, and we helped with that. It was really fun. I got to see how administration at UI worked, and work in an office where people were speaking different languages and that kind of thing. Yeah, it was really fun. I like that one.
Yes, you are actually kind of like, I think your experience is like an all-in-one package,
Yes,
because
I was
you
very
do
busy.
almost everything here.
Yeah,
Do you,
yeah.
do you ever feels like missing home when you are actually staying here?
Yeah, I kept missing Australian food.
Uh-huh.
Like little things that you couldn't get over in Indonesia. Like I think, oh, I
Yeah.
really want, what did I want? Like wheat bix, which is this kind of
Mhm.
cereal we have here, which is terrible. No, it's not nice, but it's so Australian. I kept thinking, oh, I want the cereal. And I missed my parents. And I missed,
Uh-huh.
but we talked on WhatsApp all the time. So that was
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, and it's not too bad because the time difference is very close. So if I called my
Mhm.
parents,
True.
it wasn't very late. Whereas when I went to Europe later on, we could never call because when we were awake, they were asleep, and when they were awake, we were asleep. So yeah, it was not as
Yes, the time differences.
Mm.
Okay, you actually mentioned about having difficulties with food. So probably could you tell us more about your experience, perhaps like a culture shock? What's the most shocking that you think is actually, different between the cultures of Indonesia and Australia's, and how do you overcome it?
Most shocking. I don't even know if it's like one thing. I just think everything is so different. And we had an Indonesian lecturer at University of Sydney who taught us Bahasa, and she gave us lots of information about, warungs and the food, and markets and costs, the boarding houses, and all the things that are quite different from Australia. So when we arrived, we sort of knew about it, but it was still very different. The buildings are different, the environment is different, the roads are different, the food is different. There's so many people on the roads in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And I wasn't used to that, and they're all weaving around each other and there's no rules, and I was like, and I didn't know, like, how do you cross the road? And I would just stand beside the road and wait for them to stop, and they wouldn't. And I just thought, what do you do? And I realized in Indonesia, what everyone does is they walk across the road and they hold their hand up at the drivers and they just say stop, and then they all slow down and you walk. It's completely different. There's also a lot more food stalls and people with the trolleys with the food in them than here in Australia at all. And so there's lots of different kinds of food, and it's everywhere, and it's being sold by lots of different people. The big one I had was that sambal, the chili sauce. It is
Yes.
so
How
hot.
do you think?
It is so hot. I had noodles and I put like this much on my noodle. I thought, oh, I'll just try it. And I couldn't. I had to be like, can I have some water? I can't eat this. I didn't. I was like, how do you eat this? And people were just like, oh, it's so good. It's so, oh. And so yeah, just lots of small things that add together to be very different, I think.
Yeah. And I know that you are actually a vegetarian back when you are in Indonesia.
Yes.
So for information, everyone, vegetarian is someone that cannot eat meat products, but actually still can eat something that is like secondary products of that one. So she cannot eat chicken, but she can actually eat eggs and stuff like that, cheese, stuff like that. So how do you cope with it? I mean, Indonesian food has a lot of varieties, and most of them is actually, uh, animal-based protein.
Yeah. Well, I had some friends who were at my university and they went on exchange to Indonesia before me, and they were vegan, which is like a vegetarian, but they don't eat meat and they don't eat animal products. So no cheese, keju, or eggs, telur, they can't eat that. And they said it was fine. They said, oh, it was so easy. It was so easy to find vegan food. I thought, and even here in Australia, it's a bit difficult sometimes to find vegan food. I thought, wow, if they can find vegan food, vegetarian food would be so easy. And then I got to Indonesia and it was not easy. I was like, there's nothing here. When I was in Jakarta, it was all right because there was so many restaurants. But while I was at UI, I lived in Depok, in Kukusan, and all the vendors and all the warungs around me mostly served meat, and I didn't know how to do it. But the two difficulties I had were trying to explain to vendors I didn't want meat, because I think a lot of them were like, "What do you mean? I know meat." But also because I didn't understand how to say it in Indonesian. So I think I said, I couldn't say like with, and I would say, "Oh, you know, not." I couldn't say it. I didn't know how to explain it, and they'd get confused and give me the wrong order. But eventually, like, I would go into the same places so often, they'd see me and they go, "Ah, vegetarian girl," and they get me the same thing every time with no meat. And yeah, so that worked out in the end. They all figured out what I was asking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess if it is like in Jakarta, especially like a big restaurants or something, they would definitely have, informations about this is a vegan. Like they have the
Yes.
indicator of like,
Yes.
oh, this is vegan or like vegetarian food
Mhm.
in restaurants, but it's actually very different with when you are visiting like street food or just
Yeah.
like, small stall in
Mhm.
nearby our university, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd say that the knowledge about vegetarian and vegan is somehow like quite low,
Yeah.
as we tend to eat almost everything. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's where you actually encounter your problems,
Mm.
Emily. But I am glad that you are actually, that the guy actually helps you a lot by
It was so
remembering your
nice.
face.
Yeah. Just because I was there every day. I was like, "Hi, it's me again. Can I have noodles?" And I had chapjai goreng a lot. And I
Oh,
found someone.
chapchai.
Oh, it was so good. They gave me so much, and it was so delicious. So I had that all the
Mm-hmm.
time. After basketball, I'd come home and I'd be so exhausted and really hungry, and I'd go in
Mm-hmm.
and they would just give me like so much chapjai goreng. It was very good. So
Mm-hmm. Ah, nice. Okay. Okay. So let's talk more about your study. You say that
Mhm.
you've already studied Indonesian language previously in Sydney, and then
Yes.
you also study Indonesian language here.
Hmm.
So, what's your impressions about learning Indonesian? And do you
Mm.
find it difficult? And you know,
It was much easier learning Indonesian in Indonesia than in Australia. Because when we learned it in Australia, we had about 1 or 2 lessons a week, and so it was good. But then you'd forget everything, and there weren't many people to practice with, and we had a very very small class. Um, and the thing with Indonesian and other Asian languages in Australia is that we are learning them. We have a lot of schools don't have Asian languages to be taught in them. So I had never learned Indonesian before I went to university. I'd never been exposed to it, so it was very new. But it was still good because the alphabet is similar, and the pronunciation is very constant. So that was good. And then both our teachers were from Indonesia, so they're very good at teaching it. The only problem was that if you stop speaking it for a while, you stop practicing, you forget everything, which is what I found when I went to Indonesia. And I just like stood in front of the checkout at the store, and I didn't know how to count. I just handed over money and hoped that they would know what to do. But when I was studying in Indonesia at UI in BIPA, we studied for 4 hours a day, and it was very intense. And they only spoke in Indonesian because we had students from China, Korea, England, Australia, Tanzania, all over the place. And they all spoke different languages. So the teachers just spoke in Indonesian. And so you learnt really quickly to ask questions in Indonesian, to answer them. And you learnt really fast, and you sort of didn't even realize it. And then when you left class, you went out and you spoke to Indonesian people, and you could ask for directions, and you read Indonesian everywhere. So you were constantly learning. This is one of the best language programs I've ever done over there. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear. I mean, I think yes. I think most of the languages, every time you don't actually practice it, or you don't really have the pressure to, I need to understand, because probably in your class, if you don't understand what your teachers are saying and you don't, push yourself to understand what actually she's talking about,
Yeah.
you don't know anything. So,
Mm.
yeah, glad to hear that you enjoy your Indonesian language class
Yeah.
here.
I did.
Okay, so next questions would be about Indonesia in general. Perhaps could you point out three things that you like about Indonesia?
I love the transport in Indonesia, and the many different ways of transport. So the Grab and Gojek and the motorcycles, we don't have anything like that here. We have more trains, and usually people drive their own cars. So everywhere I went in Indonesia, I could just order a car, order a motorbike, and get to places really easily. And I found it really easy to travel between different cities. So I traveled to Bandung, I traveled to Bali, and it was really quick and really easy to understand and afford. But here in Australia, we're a very, very big country, and all our cities are very far apart. So it takes a really long time to travel everywhere, and it's very expensive. The transportation in Indonesia was really good, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked all the people in Indonesia, everyone I met, everyone at university, everyone that I worked with, people I met in Gojeks, people I met in restaurants and warungs. They were constantly so helpful and so nice, and would try to speak to me in English, and if they couldn't, they'd try to understand my Indonesian. And I remember because Amira emailed me before I got to Indonesia and said, "Oh, hello, I'm your buddy, and here's how I'm going to help you, and here's all my contact details." And that was so helpful because it meant when I didn't have a clue what was going on, I could be like, "Hey, Amira, I don't know anything." Yeah, and everyone that I worked with was so helpful, and they'd answer questions about my Indonesian or the classes I was taking, and people would help me with directions when I got horribly lost. Yeah, everyone in Indonesia was constantly so kind and so helpful with everything. And the third thing I really liked about Indonesia, I think, was the food. It was very different to food here. I don't think we have a lot of Indonesian food here, but there were so many different kinds of food, so many different, depending on where you went. And I got addicted to tempeh, so I really liked that.
So you got addicted to tempeh.
I love
Tempeh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for your information, everyone, that Emily and I actually paired up previously in body programs. So in Universitas Indonesia, if you are a foreigners that you are gonna study in UI, you are actually going to have like a 101 friends. So what we did is that I was assigned to assist Emily, and before she actually arrived in Indonesia, I was like email her like saying, if you have any questions, please let me know, because I know how it feels and how terrifying, to live on your own in a foreign countries and you know nothing about it. You don't know anything. I mean, like, you don't have any friends there, you don't have any families there, and then you don't know what's waiting for you ahead. And then I'll just gonna have a quick reminder for all the participants. If you are watching our StreamYard, currently we are having an interview with a friend of mine, Emily. And then for your questions, if you have any questions during our talks, please drop them by in the YouTube. And then we are going to have question and answer sessions after that. So I'll just gonna straight up several questions more before going to the question and answer sessions. Okay, Emily. We already know about your experience mostly, but then do you have any things that you learn while you are in Indonesia that is like, you know, perhaps you are singing a song in Indonesia, or like you are teaching a young kids here, or any special moment that you think, oh, it changes my life. I mean, the turning points of your life while you are here in Indonesia.
I did not learn to sing a song because I can't sing. But I think I learned a lot of things. One of the big experiences for me was actually working at the international office, because when I was in class, I was always so tired, and because it was 4 hours of speaking in a foreign language. And if I left class, I didn't necessarily have anyone to speak to. But when I went to IO, Cantor International, I could speak to other Indonesians and they helped me with what I was saying. And there were all these activities that I could be involved with. And I got to help organize all these activities for university. And I liked being part of a team. And they were really kind and so welcoming. I really enjoyed that. Another thing I really enjoyed was playing basketball with the Faculty of Arts, I think, university team, because I couldn't speak Indonesian fast enough, but I knew how to play basketball, so I knew how to do things. But one time I remember that we had to do a drill, and we had to bounce the ball and like count really fast. And I remember thinking, oh no, because they would go, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just and I thought, I can't count that quickly. I can't count that quickly in front of all these people. Because I wasn't as good at Indonesian as I wanted to be. And all the other players were Indonesian and I was so worried. But I was able to do it. And everyone was so nice. Everyone was so welcoming. Even though I couldn't always communicate. I thought it was a really good experience. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Oh no, what happened? Amira, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, I'm sorry. I think there is some technicalities with my internet. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
I thought it was me. I thought, oh no, she's gone.
Go on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone.
That's okay. I was done. I just thought I lost you. Yeah.
Okay. So that question's already done. Okay. I hope everyone's listened to that because I am actually missing that. But then I hope I'm gonna listen to whatever you are actually telling them and later on. Okay. So as foreigners in foreign countries in Indonesia, do you think do you ever encounter like a lot of young kids when you are going somewhere, or especially like tourist attractions that you are coming there, and then a lot of kids would like hunt you down, not really hunt in that sense, but like trying to talk to you, or just like, because there are a lot of Indonesian people that is like getting very fascinated, saying, oh, there's a foreigners, perhaps I would like to learn, or just like try to interact with you in any way.
Yeah. I met lots of people, not really kids, I don't think, but around tourist attractions. I went to one which was the old town of Jakarta, but I can't remember what it's called. Do you know that one?
Yes, Kota Tua.
Yes, Kota Tua. And I met lots of people there, and they were like, oh, where are you from? And I said, Australia. And they're always they're like, oh, Australia. There's so many Australians here. That's so cool. And particularly when you speak Indonesian, they were always like, wow, you're learning Indonesian. I did meet one man, though, in Kota Tua who was like, oh, yes, he just seemed to know everything. Oh, yes, Australians are learning lots of Indonesian now. It's very impressive. I met people from Melbourne and Sydney and Perth. I know people from, I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that. But I also met kids that I taught for a little bit at a primary school and speaking in English with young kids. And what I'm always not surprised by, but impressed by wherever I go overseas, but in Indonesia in particular, the children were about 6 or 7 years old, and they all could speak English with me really easily. And then they were learning Arabic, and they also obviously spoke Indonesian, and they were almost fluent, and they knew everything, and they could speak with me in a full conversation. So that was always very impressive, and I always felt like, oh no, I should speak my Indonesian better to talk to them.
Yeah. Well, but then you did your best, and as your video profile actually showing previously, that you actually have like a good pronunciations for an Australian to speak Indonesian, right, everyone? And I hope everyone's actually agree with me, because it's really good. But then now, probably the last questions before we go to the question and answer sessions. Could you actually give us a little bit pro tips on having a public speaking, and especially because you are a native speaker engineer, but then we are as a second language. So I hope you could actually just, give us a little bit tips on how to do public speaking, because this youth community is lots of youth that is like very passionate about public speaking.
Yeah. So the first piece of advice, and this is from me when I had to do speeches in Indonesian, was that I always try to prepare as much as possible. And that's probably obvious. I'm sure you all prepare a lot. But I was not very good at improvising and just, speaking and just thinking of things. I had to write it all out and make sure I planned out the pronunciation and everything. And I think that really helps, particularly if you're doing a speech and if you get stuck or you get lost, you can go back to what you've written and think, I know why I can just say that again. But in regards to speaking in a second language, because I'm from Australia and we are a very multicultural country with people, lots and lots of people who speak English as a second language, and it's very common. And my response when I hear people doing a speech in English and it's clear it's their second language and they might not be very confident or they're a bit slower than other native English speakers, and a lot of native speakers agree with me, is that we think, wow, that person is fluent in another language and they're getting up and they're speaking in a language they're not familiar with and they're talking to all of us and they're doing so well and they're pronouncing really well. I'm so impressed because a lot of Australians who speak English as a first language don't learn another one because our education system is not great. We don't learn other languages. So I'm always very impressed when I hear people speaking in another language. And I think if you have people in the audience or anything who criticize you or judge you when you don't understand something or when you get confused, it's impressive that you get up and you can speak in this other language and you want to speak in front of people. I think you should always just ignore them and just keep going. And what I tell all my students who practice public speaking is, to stay calm and slow down and just keep going and do absolutely the best you can, because it's impressive that you got up and did what you did. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for sharing though. We are going to have listen to the questions. Okay, so this is Savira Stephanie asking a questions. Emily, what is your favorite words in Indonesian? Perhaps you could say hi first to Safira.
Hi, Savira. Salamat sore? What time is it over there? Salamat sore, Savira. Siang. Salamat siang.
It's 11 now.
What time is it here? Oh, it's Salamat siang di sini as well. What are my favorite words in Indonesian? Sedikit, because that was the one we said all the time in Indonesia. People would say,
sedikit.
Berbahasa Indonesia, we go, sedikit, we could only say a little bit.
Yeah.
Almost.
What else?
I like tanpa, without
tanpa. Oh yeah.
Everywhere I went, I said, tanpa ayam, because I didn't want meat on my food. And once I learned that word, it made sense. What else? Mengajar? Mengajar means understand. Is that right?
Mengajar means teach.
Mengajar.
What do you want?
Understand.
Memahami.
Memahami. I'm thinking of another word. Doesn't matter. I'm sorry.
Because Indonesian has a lot of meanings.
Yes, I know.
In the end of the day.
Yeah. And tidak tahu. That would be the thing we always said in class. Tidak tahu. So doesn't tidak tahu.
Yeah. That would be logical to have it. Yeah. And thank you, Safira. So the next questions. Fanny Kardika say, what is your memorable experience in Indonesia? But I think you've already mentioned quite a lot. Perhaps another things that you could actually mention?
Yes. I have two, but I can say, okay, so on my last night in Indonesia, before I went home to Australia, I had no more data on my phone, so I didn't have internet. and I came home from the mall and I got a Gojek, but I used the mall's Wi-Fi and didn't have my thing, and I put the wrong wrong address in. So we got horribly lost, and it was the middle of the night, and I had curfew, and there was nobody around, and it was dark, and I was very worried. And the Gojek driver he was so nice. He said, "Oh, no, don't worry." We were so lost. And so he got his phone out and he got me, the app wasn't working. It was a mess. He got the hotspot to work on my phone, and I got Google Maps up, and I said, and I directed us home, all the way home, like Kanan Kiri, all the way through the streets. And then he got me home. And then he wouldn't let me pay him. And he said, "Oh, can we be friends on Facebook?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you so much." It was like a 5-minute ride, and it took us half an hour because it was ridiculous. He was very nice. He was very kind. It was very memorable.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question.
Terima kasih, Fanny.
Dia Andani. Miss Emily, how to speak English fluently? I often get difficulty to practice because I don't have a partner to speak English, and I often feel bored. Is there any pro tips that you could actually, propose to Leah?
Well, if you want a partner, I'll speak English with you if you would like to. In terms of practicing, I know getting bored. I think the obvious one would be watching movies. Any movies that you particularly enjoy and watching them in English. And when I was practicing, I'd often watch something in Indonesian with English subtitles. So if you don't understand immediately, maybe you can watch in English and have Indonesian subtitles, so you have some understanding of it. Another thing would be trying to speak at home to yourself, even in English. Just practicing using words, because when I was at home, like practicing Indonesian, my Indonesian is not as good as it used to be, so that's why I'm sort of struggling with the words, so I apologize for that. Is that, if you try to describe yourself going somewhere or doing something and you find, oh, there's a word I need, but I don't remember it, and you have to look it up and practice it, and that helps. Yeah, I hope that helps. I know it's very difficult, but good luck with practicing it. Your question is perfectly fluent. Well done.
But then, do you do the same when you are actually studying Indonesians?
Yeah.
Like,
I like to study. I'm not very good at speaking to people in the language. What I like to do is actually write stuff down. So write lists of words and practice it that way, and practice writing sentences out. So I practiced writing in a diary for a while. That's what I did because I like writing stuff down, and that helps me remember things better than just listening to stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably for Leah, she can actually try to listen or watch more movies in English. But I hope you may actually start with, without this title at all. So you can actually try to gather the informations and try to let your head actually record something from that movie, even though you just understand what's going on from that, the visual of the movies instead of like listening to that. But then I think by listening more to other languages, you are get used to it. So that would help you, Leah.
Yeah. And also
Uh-huh.
with Leah saying that she gets bored, I think I get that, because it can be really difficult, and you keep practicing and you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, and you think, why am I doing this? If you feel bored with it, I think having a goal in mind, like why you want to learn English, if it's because you want to study there in a country that speaks English, or you want to travel to that country or work there, if that helps you remain focused and think, no, I'm not doing this because it's interesting. I'm doing it because I want to do this. And that helps me, because I keep thinking, when I go back to Indonesia, I have to be able to speak it. So I have to keep practicing to make sure I can. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Leah. Okay. Dewi Amiarti, what should we prepare as a foreigner if we want to go to Australia?
Well, it depends on why you're coming. So if you want to come as a tourist, or if you're working here, or as a student, what should you prepare if you're coming to Australia?
Well, perhaps
Yeah.
you could actually just like say it as a tourist instead of
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
working, because I think most of the participants here were actually still young.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
perhaps
So
they're
yeah.
studying or
Mhm.
uh,
Well, all of you are obviously listening in English and typing in English, so you have some English, and that's great. Australia is very multicultural, and we do speak a lot of different languages, but a lot of the information and the signs and people who provide information is still in English. So, if you know the normal questions like, how do I get here, directions,
mhm.
all that kind of thing, that's really helpful because you need English to get around. What else? I guess understanding the currency and how that works because it is different to Indonesia. Indonesia as well uses a lot of cash. Here we use credit cards and cards and that sort of thing a lot more often. What else is there? I guess the temperatures and the weather is very different. We're not as humid, but it does depend when you come. If you come here in the summer, it can be very hot, which is great because you can go to the beach. But yeah, depending on where you go, the weather is very different, so you can be prepared for that. Um, we don't have anything. We have Uber, but we don't have Gojek or Grab or anything like that. And Uber can be quite expensive compared to Gojek and Grab. So if you want to use public transport, you can use the buses and you can use the trains. And you have to get something called an Opal card,
Mhm.
OPAL, to tap on and use those things. They can be a bit confusing. So if you look it up and you can find apps to help you get around, I mean, I say that people here get confused. I don't understand how the buses work here. So I imagine if you are a foreigner, that can be difficult. So if you look into those things or if you ask an Australian to help you, and if you, particularly if you're in busy areas, like if you're in the city or you're around tourist attractions, people are
Mhm.
willing to help. So if you get lost, if you don't know how to get to somewhere, if you need to get to a hotel, if you don't know the buses, people are willing to help. And even if they can't or they don't, just keep trying because we will try. I mean, I've been asked questions before and I don't know what to do, so I sit there on my phone and I Google and I try to help. So be willing to ask questions from people. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dewi.
Thank you, Dale.
Next one. Okay, it's Hanif. Hi, Emily. Can you tell us about the culture in Australia? Because in the future, I want to continue my study overseas, and Australia is one of my options.
Okay. Thank you, honey. It's very exciting you want to study in Australia. The culture in Australia. Culture in Australia. Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
more like
Yeah.
studying cultures or
Mm-hmm.
like academic cultures
Yes.
in Australia, perhaps
Mm-hmm.
because um, perhaps you could actually start mentioning that double degree in Australia is quite usual, while
Mm-hmm.
here in Indonesia's double degree is actually kind of like privilege and something that is like,
Oh.
very rare.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Um, yeah, okay. So in terms of academic culture, it's very common that we study double degrees, which means 2 degrees at the same time, which is what I'm doing. That's we have a lot of international students doing the same thing, but we also have international students doing masters and that kind of thing. If you were to come to Australia to study and you were an international student, you would be there are so many international students here, and so it'd be very common. It's particularly at universities, it's very multicultural. We have Australians from all different backgrounds speaking all different languages, and we have international students as well speaking all different languages and that kind of thing. At universities, it depends on which uni you go to as well. They're not very different, but they have differences in like class sizes and the majors that people can do. But they have different clubs and that kind of thing. I think in Australia, a lot of people complain about at universities that no one really talks to each other and no one really gets together, and that can be a problem. So, joining clubs, joining sporting teams can be a great way to meet people. Australians love sport. Australians love going to the beach. The beach is a great place to meet people, and everyone loves going there. So, absolutely do give that a go. What else do we like to do? Um, a lot of people like going to pubs. That's the Australian culture, for dinner and that kind of thing. But, you don't have to drink or anything. It's, just a way to hang out with different people. We're nice we're nice. We want to make friends. We want to make friends from different countries. And, if you're from a country that we have been to or haven't been to, we think that's really cool. But like, oh, that's so cool. And how are you going and everything? And generally we try to be very helpful to people from overseas. So yeah, I hope that helps. Whatever.
Yeah, I think that will be giving Hanif. Okay, so this one, the next questions would be the last questions before going to have a closing statement.
Mm-hmm.
So Zulkifli from Lampung is another island actually. So
Yes.
Lampung is, you need to cross the Java Islands
Oh, okay,
to
yeah.
go to Lampung. So
Mhm.
Lampung is on Sumatra Islands.
Okay.
What are the differences among English in Australia, British, and American?
We're the best. The biggest difference is the accent. And I notice that when I meet foreigners who speak English as a second language, they often have an American accent because a lot of English teachers overseas are American and a lot of movies are American and they speak using an American accent. That's the biggest difference. There are differences in spelling. So British and American are the most different. And I think Australian is like in the middle because we have similarities between both. So the Americans change some of the spelling, but the grammar is very similar. Sometimes greetings might be a bit different. They're like cultural differences, but generally speaking, there aren't big differences. If you learn American English and you go to England, they will understand what you're saying. They might think you have an American accent, but they'll understand what you're saying. There are terms for like food and, nicknames and that kind of thing that are different, and cultural differences like how you talk about, movies or friends, that would be different. But it doesn't matter which one you learn, and you can be understood anywhere. And if you listen to movies or TV shows from them, particularly I think if you're really used to watching American TV and then you watch English TV, it's like different because then they've got like Scottish people and stuff, and that could be confusing. Even for us, we're like, what are they saying? But yeah, it's not a huge difference. I hope that helps.
Okay, so that marks up the last questions. And now, please do give us a closing statement before we end our sessions today.
Okay, for me.
Yes.
Thank you so much everyone for coming. I hope this has been helpful. I've really enjoyed doing it. I've enjoyed talking to you about my experiences in Indonesia and public speaking. I'm so impressed that so many of you are learning English. Whenever I went to Indonesia, I was always blown away by how well people speak English because, we struggle so much to learn languages. And I'm so grateful that, you're willing to listen to me talk. And I hope Australia and Indonesian people can continue to develop great relations between each other. Best of luck with learning English. Congratulations on how well you're doing. I know if I had to listen to something like this in Indonesian, I would struggle a bit. So well done and keep going. And I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you. And I hope everyone is staying safe in COVID. And I hope your families are okay. And I hope you're staying safe. And I wish you the best and hope we're all doing much better next year.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emily, for spending your precious time especially because it's weekend, to share your experience and then try to speak English to us so that we can actually learn by listening to whatever you are saying and whatever you are sharing to us. And I hope this session also enlighten you all, the participants of the Speakable, this episode today. And I hope we can see you in another opportunity as well. So see you guys. Bye. Bye, Emily.
Bye. Bye, everybody. I'm back.
Yeah. Okay then. See ya.
Bye. See you, Mary. Thank you.
Bye.